looks like we're mostly here, so welcome. I'm Dr. Darcy Reeves-East, the FYS Director, and this is the first of our plenaries, and just so you know, plenary means a meeting that's attended by all participants, each of which will focus on one of our core values here at Augustana University, and those are the liberal arts, Christian excellence, and community. Our purpose in highlighting these core values is to emphasize that education really is more than just a class you take or a requirement you check off a list. It is about learning what your mission is in life and how you can contribute positively to the world around you. We want you to leave Augustana as someone who embodies the best of what it means to be liberally, that means broadly educated, spiritual, excellent, and focused on your fellow human beings. Today's speaker is Dr. Colin Irvine, who is the Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs here at Augustana, who is going to discuss what the liberal arts are and what it means to be broadly educated and why that is important. However, before we begin, I am happy to be able to announce the first winners of the new FYS Excellence in Writing Award. This monetary award is designed to recognize outstanding research writing from the previous spring FYS classes. And we're doing this in order to demonstrate that even though you are first-year students, you are scholars and you are capable of producing insightful and important research. And like professional academic writing, these essays were chosen and vetted by peers, that is, the student tutors from our Writing Center. So, our first place award of $150 goes to Bessie Pearson for her essay, Marina Abramovich, Meaning and Performance Art. Okay, well, congratulations, Bessie. The first runner-up award of $75 goes to Mariah Haight's essay, Doctor Speak, an Exploration of Communication and the Culture of Medicine. And finally, the second runner-up award of $75 goes to Julia Johnson's essay, Oxymoronic Food, How Eating Together Creates Separation. Well, I guess the checks are in the mail for them. Okay, so thank you, and now I turn it over to Dr. Colin Irvine.
Thank you. As Darcy said, my name is Dr. Colin Irvine. I've got 80 slides, lots of jokes, so let's get started. I have 5 goals. First, get you to think. Second, get you to think about your thinking. Third, get you to think about what liberal arts thinking is and what it can do. Fourth, get you to understand 2 concepts. And fifth, get you to connect the dots between and among goals 1 through 4. As for the haystacks, it's a riddle, so let's start thinking. What does it mean that the haystack was important because the cloth ripped? The liberal arts, meaning all arts and sciences combined in ways that are intentional, practical, and aesthetic, are about the fact that our brains need and like to connect dots and to fill gaps. And it's not just in art or the arts like music, literature, or painting. Solving for X is a kind of connecting the dots, of filling in of gaps. Humor is also innately interested in connecting dots and filling in gaps, something I will have more to say about soon. And yes, I'm going to be that person that explains a joke. I apologize in advance. Anyway, by connecting the dots, I don't mean simply drawing lines between them or filling in gaps. I mean thinking differently and coming up with new ideas, new ways to solve equations, conundrums, riddles, and problems. You've likely all seen this puzzle, for instance, regarding how you can connect all of these dots without lifting your pencil. It's not until you think outside the supposed box of dots, and by supposed I mean that it's not really a box unless we let it be, that you can figure out how to solve the riddle. Interestingly, our brains are wired not for conforming, but for adapting, for overcoming. We automatically move things around and make them make sense. This is how our brains work. For instance, the passage, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letters be in the right place, at the right place. The rest can be a total mess and you can still read it without problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. Goal 4. Goal 4 is to get you to understand 2 concepts, which is to say 2 terms for something you already do well, maybe even dangerously well. One is to connect these dots. Again, if you think about it, this is just a group of dots, a collection of dots that has a certain beauty to it when the dots are connected. So back to these 2 concepts. One is assumptions or warrants, and one is this idea of conceptual blending, or put another way, innovative creative thinking. Again, you likely do these things already and you do them well. First, the assumptions. This one's important for world peace, for getting along better with your roommate, for solving climate change, and for determining how you really feel about pests. So listen closely to this statement. Every single time you make a claim, followed by a reason, you make an assumption about what others think and believe to be right and true. Listen one more time. Listen one more time, because this is the most important thing that you're going to learn while you're in college. Every single time you make a claim, followed by a reason, you make an assumption about what others think and believe to be right and true. I'll give you an example. FYS is a great program. That's my claim, because whatever follows the because statement is always the reason, because you make friends. What's the assumption? What is it that you believe to be right and true if you were to make this claim? The assumption is that it's important to make friends in college. Let's try this again. FYS is a great program. There's my claim, because whatever follows the because statement is my reason, because you learn to write well. What's the assumption? Writing well is important. FYS is a great program. There's my claim, because, here comes the reason, some of you learn about Batman and some of you learn about toilets. What's the assumption? And it's a weird one. Learning about Batman and toilets is important. And finally, FYS is a great program because you get to hear from great guest speakers about things like the liberal arts. There's a lot of assumptions here. First, if it wasn't optional and attendance is mandatory and they made you swipe your card before you came in, you really deep down wanted to be here. The other assumption is that I'm a good guest speaker, and that's not true. I go too fast and I have too many slides. We'll have to get together and get through this together. Assumptions, again, finally, to sum up what you've learned so far. Assumptions equal the filling of gaps, correctly or incorrectly, between what one knows and what one assumes to be true and right. We can be right about our assumptions and we can be wrong about them. Sometimes we are wrong about seemingly obvious things because we have different needs or different values than the people with whom we're talking. Take the very simple and seemingly obvious statement or claim, "It's a beautiful day." Add a because or reason to that statement, and you make an assumption that can be problematic. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day because it's hot and sunny, and we can go water skiing. It's a beautiful day because it's cold and snowy. Looks good, Cal. Everybody follow me so far? Okay, so hang on, it's going to get more complicated. Starlings, and this bird is a starling. Starlings are a very common bird in this part of the country. They build their nest almost anywhere. I'm going to give you a hypothetical scenario, and you're going to turn to the person next to you, and you're going to give them a reason. So read closely, pay attention. I'm going to walk you through this. Here's the scenario. A bunch of starlings build nest in the attic of a family's house, gaining access to the attic through a torn vent screen. Soon, the eggs of the starlings hatch, and every morning at sunrise, the family who lives in the house is awakened by the sound of birds squawking and wings beating against the rafters, as the starlings fly in and out of the house to feed the hatchlings. Everybody with me so far? After losing considerable early morning sleep, the family repairs the broken screen. Unable to get in and out, the parent birds are unable to feed their young. The birds, consequently, die within a day. Here's the question, and I want you to give an answer to the person on either side of you. Is the repairing of the screen cruelty to animals? You got 20 seconds. Think about your answer, and then give one of these statements. Yes, it's cruelty to animals because. No, it's not cruelty to animals because. you said yes, it is cruelty to animals. Oh, be proud. Okay? Thanks, Patricia. Raise your hand if you said no, it's not cruelty to animals. All right, I'm going to give you a couple possible reasons. Yes, it's cruelty to animals because the birds could not feed their babies, and so the babies died a slow, avoidable death. The assumption causing slow, avoidable deaths is bad. No, it's not cruelty to animals because starlings are just pests. Now, I said at the outset you have to do some thinking. I'm going to ask you to think about this one pretty hard. There's several assumptions here. I would say as many as 8, possibly 9. What are some of the assumptions built into the statement here? I'll go through some of the ones quickly. Number 1, starlings are pests. That's an assumption. Number 2, there is such a thing as a pest. Number 3, pests have less value than other creatures. Number 4, humans determine what has value. Number 5, the determination of value is in part established by and reified through language. Number 6, some things have more value than others. Number 7, some things that have less value can be killed. Grim. Number 8, value matters. To sum up, assumptions equal the filling of gaps between what one knows and what one assumes others believe to be true. Second concept. Conceptual blending, which is a way of describing how we think, and more specifically, it is a way of thinking about thinking. It's a way of thinking about innovation. It's a way of thinking about creativity. It's a way of thinking about liberal arts type thinking. So there's 2 inputs here. Think of your mind as a device that collects and groups information. As information comes into the brain, it puts that information into categories. These categories include things like emotion, music, sports, gravy, geography, young gravy, sizes, shapes, and colors. Yes, he did say young gravy. Our brains take information from these groups, typically taking known information and blending it with new information. Hence, information from one input is brought together with information from another input or group. In this instance, yellow is brought together with red, and both are just colors. But it gets more interesting. Analogically speaking, our brains blend things in ways we might not think of, colors being blended. The result isn't just red and yellow, or baseball and lacrosse, but a new thing, like a new sport. For instance, if we blend biking and running, we get duathlons, and duathlons are similar, but they're different. If we blend these 3 sports, we get a triathlon, and if anybody's done a triathlon, you know it's not just doing 3 sports, it's a different sport. And then there's this weird thing here, where you ski and deer hunt. That's another kind of sport that they mostly do in Norway. Anyway, this is what happens in your brain. You take things from 2 places, maybe 2 similar categories, like kinds of sports or kinds of colors, and maybe surprisingly different categories like dogs and people, and your brain blends them to create something different, sometimes something surprisingly different. The bringing together of things into a category to find common ground, essentially to do the kind of critical thinking associated with comparing and contrasting, evaluating, analyzing, happens here in the generic space that you see at the top. It's a place where blending begins to happen possibly. Here's one of my favorite examples. The chart shows critical thinking, the comparison of gloves and shoes in terms of their function or their use. This is solid critical thinking. But, and this is the coolest part, it becomes liberal arts thinking when your brain runs the blend and fills into the blanks that many brains, many people who have worn shoes and who have worn gloves never considered until somebody did consider them, and their brain did this liberal arts kind of thinking that led to this. This is the result of next level, creative, innovative, liberal arts thinking. So let's do a fun exercise here, just to illustrate the point. The great thing about humor, and about jokes in particular, is the fact that we can know if your brain ran the blend by whether or not you get the joke. In other words, if a person tells you a joke and you don't get it, you don't get why it's funny, that means you didn't or couldn't run the blend. This isn't a measure of your intelligence in most cases. Instead, it's a measure of whether you have what you need in the way of inputs, information, and experience to get, or more accurately, complete a joke. How many of you have a dog? Raise your hand. Excellent. How many of you know of people who have a dog? It's a pretty safe audience. How many of you know what neutering means? That's kind of interesting because there was a lot of hands that went up before. A lot of people have dogs, not all of you know what neutering is. Fair enough. How many of you know what tutoring means? Good, you should all get this joke. Here's how it goes. The dog says, ha ha, Biff, guess what? After we go to the drugstore and the post office, I'm going to the vet's to get tutored. That was my best dog impersonation. Okay, here's how the dog works. The joke works. On the one input, we have the dog world, and on the other input, we have the people world. Some things that you need to know about dogs. First, they're pretty clueless. They communicate happiness by wagging their tails, and for the most part, they're pretty happy. Some things to know in this particular instance about people as opposed to dogs: they have the capacity to be proactive, to think and plan ahead. They communicate by talking, and they are, in some cases, certainly more often than dogs, businesslike and practical. That gets us to this situation. Here's your comparison and the implied question is, what would a scenario look like wherein a dog spoke and wagged his tail and yet was still dog-like in his cluelessness? And the answer is this. This is a joke. Okay, here's my question. Did you get it? Raise your hand if you got it. Okay, good. So you've run the blend. You've completed the joke. Put differently, your brain was thinking in the way of the liberal arts. It was running the blend or imaginatively thinking about, analyzing, reflecting on, etc. All of the above in hopes of generating a new understanding and possibly new insights and breakthroughs. And really, your brain doesn't so much as get jokes as it does them. Do you get it? And did you get that joke? And honestly, we're in a little bit of a Russian doll situation, so I'm going to move on. Quick side note. Like humor and like algebra, literature is all about running the blend. Take the short story from Hemingway, for instance. Read it really quickly, it shouldn't take you too long. Raise your hand when you get the point of the story. Good. Innovations, breakthroughs, these come from this blending of inputs, this imaginative thinking. For instance, one day at work in 1945, Percy Spencer was standing next to an active magnetron machine. He was working for the U.S. military. He was standing next to an active magnetron machine when a candy bar in his pocket melted. Intrigued, he sent out for unpopped popcorn to test his suspicion, and we ended up with this result here. That was the invention of the microwave. My point is this: the more information you have and the more experiences you have, and here are examples of inputs, and the more you learn ways to analyze, catalog, critique, communicate, and evaluate information, the more of these breakthroughs you'll have, the more you'll make connections and do new things. But here's the thing. The problems we need you to understand and solve, and by we I mean all of humanity, the problems that we need you to understand and solve, the messy, massive, wicked problems, to borrow from Professor Lara, associated with things like poverty, cancer, and climate change cannot and will not be solved by one person, even if that person is trained in the liberal arts. So this is where we connect the two biggest dots. You must know your own assumptions, and you must understand others, especially others from backgrounds that differ from your own. If you are, as a community of liberal arts innovators, going to inspire and enact the kinds of innovations that will save our world, your world, and that will ensure that we enjoy and benefit from the work that we do together for each other, you must know each other's assumptions. That way, as a group, we can run these blends and make these breakthroughs. So here's one more blend. The haystack was important because the cloth ripped. What does that mean? And sometimes you just need a little bit more information into it, a little bit more learning, and you can make the connection. You can run the blend. Finally, speaking of filling in gaps and working together to save the world, how many have seen the movie Guardians of the Galaxy? Excellent. What does it mean in the movie Guardians of the Galaxy when he says, "I am Groot"? Tell the person next to you, especially if they haven't seen the movie, what does it mean when somebody says, "I am Groot"? Yes, thank you. Any sentence in any context. Okay. So it's one of the best examples, I think, in film history of creating a situation where the characters are paying attention and they fill in the gap, and then the viewers are paying attention and they fill in the gap. What does it mean in this situation? At the very end of the movie, when the ship is going down, and he says, it's the only time he doesn't say I'm Groot, he says we are Groot. So I'm not going to give you the answer, that would ruin the whole point of filling in the gaps. But I want you to think about that in this context. What does it mean for us to think about all of these messy, massive, huge problems, most of which my generation and the generations before created? We're leaving them for you to understand and begin to solve. I'm sorry I had so many slides. I hope you made it through. I trust that you did a little bit of thinking. I wish you all the best this year. Good luck. We are Groot.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you all. So now please follow whatever your professor's instructions were regarding the rest of the class time. Have a wonderful day.